for more on this trade, we bring in CBS Sports NFL writer John Breech. And John, probably surprising to a lot of Seahawks fans, maybe not so much to the Raiders because of the connection between Pete Carroll and Geno Smith. But how do you digest this trade from the Raiders and the Seahawks?
Well, look, Chris, we knew the Raiders were going to be looking under every rock for a quarterback this offseason, whether that was the draft, signing a free agent, maybe making a trade. But I think this is an absolute shocker in the sense that if Pete Carroll was going to reunite with a former quarterback, we all thought it was going to be Russell Wilson. But here he is reuniting with Geno Smith. And as you said, obviously they have some history together. And I think the most interesting part is we know that Pete Carroll is clearly a huge fan of Geno Smith. We saw what happened following the 2021 season in Seattle when the front office in Seattle basically decided, hey, look, we're done with Russell Wilson. We're giving Geno Smith the starting job. And Pete Carroll obviously had a hand in that. Geno Smith was the starter in Seattle for 2 seasons before Pete Carroll was let go there. So I think Pete Carroll is hoping, hey, look, I've got a guy I'm familiar with. I think we can win with him here during my first season in Las Vegas. And I think this also tells you a little bit about how the Raiders maybe feel about the class of free agents, the quarterback class that's about to hit, whether it's Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. It feels like the Raiders kind of looked at everyone, evaluated everyone, and said, yeah, maybe Geno Smith might be a better option for us right now just because he is familiar with Pete Carroll and some of that coaching staff. So, yeah, this was an absolute surprise, but not a shocker that the Raiders got a quarterback because we knew that was going to happen.
Right. So now, the Raiders, they're picking 6 in the draft, right? Some would say, Shedeur Sanders is a guy who perhaps they could have gotten, or maybe they can still get him, right? Because to me, John, what I'm thinking about, Geno Smith is 1 year older than me. He's 34 years old. He's probably got 3 or 4 years of good football left, maybe even less, right? Do you think it's possible that Shedeur still could be drafted, or do you think the Raiders are going to pivot looking to get a weapon for Geno Smith?
Well, I think the Raiders are in an interesting situation heading into the draft, and it's a much better situation because they don't have to draft a quarterback. So when you're sitting at 6 overall with no Geno Smith and no quarterback, you really have to do whatever you can to make sure you get someone. But now that they have Geno Smith there, I think the thing is you're going to want to watch over the next week or two is whether Geno Smith gets a new contract and how much money that is. Because if he gets a huge contract from the Raiders, that's Las Vegas screaming, hey, we're not worried about drafting a quarterback in April. We're good with Geno Smith. If he gets kind of a bridge quarterback deal, then you're thinking, all right, well, the Raiders are still in the market to get a quarterback in the draft, and that could be Shedeur Sanders. But I think if you're the Raiders, you like where you are because, look, you have a lot of holes on that roster. Maybe you could even trade back from 6th to 9th, 10th, 11th, whatever it is, to get some more picks to fill those holes. Or maybe you stay at 6, and if you don't like the quarterbacks available, you could take a cornerback, a defensive tackle. You could fill one of the holes that you need. So this really just gives the Raiders a lot more options, which is exactly what you need when you're a team in the position that the Raiders are in.
So do you feel like this is a changing of the Raiders franchise in terms of how we look at them? Because for the past few years, the quarterback position has been so dismal. Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, Jimmy Garoppolo, are we in a new era here? I know it's on paper, so we can't talk about the field, but do you feel like we're trending in that direction?
Well, it really felt like the Raiders were an afterthought going into before the seasons were even starting with their quarterback situation. Look, no one thought the Raiders were going to win the AFC West in 2024 when you have Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell trying to win a division where Patrick Mahomes is the king. That's just not going to happen. We're also facing Justin Herbert is the other quarterback. So you have to get that quarterback situation fixed. And I do think that Geno Smith will certainly make this team more competitive than Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell. Does that mean that they're ready to dethrone the Chiefs? I'm not sure about that, but I think you probably feel a little bit better about this team, the front office be able to build a roster that could possibly compete for a wild card spot. And I think if you're a Raiders fan, that's about as good as you could ask for right now because they've been so far away from just that over the past few years.
So the vibes are getting better with the Las Vegas Raiders. On the other side, what are the Seahawks doing? Because they released Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, asking for a trade, right? You do still have Jackson Smith and Jigba, but what are their plans for the future, man?
Yeah, Chris, it seems like the sky is falling in Seattle. Everyone wants out. What is it, the weather? It's always raining. I don't know what is going on there. So this is interesting because it does feel like if you're the Seattle Seahawks and you're trading away your starting quarterback, and look, I get the situation. Geno Smith is going into the final year of his deal. If he's looking for a monstrous extension and you don't necessarily want to give it to him, it does make more sense to trade him away, get a draft pick. They're getting a third-round pick out of it. But you really don't want to trade your starting quarterback away unless you have a backup plan in place. And I'm not sure that Seattle does. So they have Sam Howell, who has been a starter in the NFL before, but they are going to get someone else. Now, you look at the free agent class. Maybe they are interested in Sam Darnold. Seahawks head coach Mike McDonald got a front row seat to Sam Darnold in Week 16 when the Vikings beat the Seahawks 27-24. Darnold had an impressive game, threw 3 touchdowns, and maybe after that, McDonald was intrigued with Darnold. I think another intriguing name is Kirk Cousins. He's not a free agent yet, but I can't imagine the Falcons hold on to him. And the reason Cousins is interesting is because the Seahawks' new offensive coordinator is Clint Kubiak. Clint Kubiak was in Minnesota for 3 seasons with Kirk Cousins, 2 as his QB coach, 1 as his offensive coordinator. So there's some familiarity there. And then you have the other free agent names, the Aaron Rodgers, the Justin Fieldses, guys that maybe they poke around, but it does feel like they're going to have to sign someone in free agency. So this is going to be a team to watch next week. And I think Cousins is maybe the most fascinating name, with Darnold probably being the leader in the clubhouse.
Yeah, a new chapter for the Seahawks franchise as they look to fill their franchise QB after trading Geno Smith to the Las Vegas Raiders. John Breech, we always appreciate the insight, brother. And here is the current draft order in the NFL. Titans #1, Raiders, they have the 6th pick. Seahawks, they're number 18, so unless they want to draft a QB, who's going to be a project, like maybe a Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, even put out Will Howard. Doesn't look like they're going to get a QB in the draft. It's probably going to come, as John talked about, in free agency.